There's a quiet kind of person you might know. They're the ones who disappear into books, movies, shows, entire worlds that don't exist. They feel more alive watching a character's heartbreak than experiencing their own. They cry for people who were never real, and somehow it feels safer than crying for themselves. People like this don't hate reality. They just feel more understood in fiction. Because in stories, emotions are allowed to make sense. There's meaning behind the pain, closure after the chaos, and even tragedy feels poetic. But in real life, pain just feels unfinished, messy, unfair. So they escape, not out of laziness or delusion, but because fiction gives them something reality rarely does, a space where feelings have structure, where love stays pure, and where people grow the way they're supposed to. This isn't just about imagination. It's about safety. In fiction, no one interrupts you. No one tells you to get over it. No one calls you dramatic for feeling deeply. You can fall apart with a book in your hands and call it art, but fall apart in real life, and suddenly you're too sensitive. And so, fiction becomes more than a story. It becomes home. Psychologically, this is something called escapism, but it's not as simple as avoiding reality. It's emotional self-preservation. When real life feels unpredictable, when people feel inconsistent, the mind looks for order, for a world where things follow rules. Fiction gives that order. Every story, no matter how wild, still has a reason, a purpose, a resolution. Reality doesn't always give that comfort. Sometimes people leave without goodbye. Sometimes you try your best and fail anyway. Sometimes love fades quietly, with no lesson attached. And for people who feel deeply, that uncertainty hurts more than anything. So they run to places where chaos still makes sense. You'll often find these people daydreaming, not because they're distracted, but because their mind is trying to breathe. They replay scenes from stories, imagine conversations that never happened, live in alternate versions of their life where they said what they couldn't in reality. They build worlds inside themselves because the outer one feels too sharp. Psychologists sometimes call this maladaptive daydreaming when it goes too far, when the escape becomes addictive. But at its heart, it's a sign of emotional depth, a need for connection, meaning, and beauty that reality doesn't always meet. Fiction gives them a mirror, but a gentler one. In stories, they can explore fear without being judged. They can love without the risk of rejection. They can grieve without anyone telling them to move on. Every feeling they suppress in daily life finds a safe place to live inside fiction. And that's the paradox. They might look like they're running away, but what they're actually doing is processing what's too heavy to carry. It's not avoidance, it's survival in disguise. Many people who prefer fiction over reality also carry an invisible kind of loneliness. It's not always about being alone, it's about feeling unseen. In real life, people rarely talk the way characters do. They don't confess their fears under the stars or deliver perfect monologues. In fiction, vulnerability is rewarded. In real life, it's often punished. So they retreat into stories where people actually say what they feel, where emotions are allowed to take up space, and where connection feels clean, sincere, and complete. This love for fiction often grows stronger during adolescence, a time when the world feels too big and the self feels too small. Books and films become teachers, characters become friends, and imaginary places become the only safe corner of the mind. For some, that comfort never really fades. As adults, they still feel a little more themselves in the glow of a screen or the pages of a novel because those worlds never judge them for who they are. They don't have to impress anyone there. They don't have to compete. They can just be. But over time, something painful can happen. The more you live in fiction, the less satisfying reality becomes. Real life starts to feel dull, unedited, unscored, like a rough draft that never turns into something beautiful. You start comparing yourself to the characters you love, their courage, their purpose, their dramatic growth arcs, and real life feels static by comparison. you start wondering, why doesn't my life feel that meaningful? Where's my turning point, my climax, my redemption? But life doesn't move in chapters. It meanders, circles, doubles back. And when you've grown used to stories that always lead somewhere, reality's silence can feel unbearable. There's also something else: control. In fiction, you can replay moments, rewrite endings, pause when things hurt too much. But in real life, there's no pause button. You can't skip to the part where things make sense. You can't reread yesterday with better choices. That lack of control terrifies people who love fiction because in stories there's always someone guiding the chaos, the author. In life, there's just you. And if you've ever been hurt, betrayed, or abandoned, that lack of control feels like danger. So, fiction becomes your way of holding the reins again, like a way to escape powerlessness. A world where you can hurt safely, knowing it will all be okay in the end. But what's really fascinating is that this isn't weakness. It's imagination doing what it was built to do: protect you. The human mind has always used stories to survive. We tell myths to make sense of death, legends to give meaning to pain, and fantasies to soften fear. Stories are our way of creating order in the chaos of living. People who prefer fiction aren't out of touch with reality. They're just deeply aware of how fragile it is. They see life's cracks more clearly than others. They feel more, notice more, imagine more, and that intensity needs somewhere to go. Fiction becomes the container that reality cannot hold. They don't escape because life is meaningless. They escape because they see too much meaning in everything. They're overwhelmed by it. They don't want less emotion. They want a place where emotion is allowed to exist fully. And yet, the danger is when that inner world becomes the only safe one. When you stop trying to connect with real people because fictional ones feel easier. When you start measuring love by how perfectly it's written. When the bar for life becomes something no life can meet. Healing, then, is not about giving up fiction. It's about learning to bring its beauty into reality. To see the poetry in small things, to find meaning in imperfection. To live your own story, not as perfectly as a script, but as truthfully as a heartbeat. The goal isn't to stop escaping. It's to build a life you no longer need to escape from, to keep your imagination alive, but connected to the world around you. To realize that the magic you love in fiction exists here too, just quieter, smaller, hidden between moments. Maybe real life doesn't have background music. Maybe the plot twists don't make sense until years later, but it's still a story. One you're writing, scene by scene, and unlike fiction, you don't know the ending yet. That's what makes it terrifying and beautiful. People who prefer fiction are not running away from life. They're searching for a version of it that feels worth living. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the truth lies. Not in choosing between fiction or reality, but in learning that both can coexist. That stories can be the bridge between the life we imagine and the one we're trying to love. And so if you're one of those people, don't feel ashamed for living inside your head. It means you're alive in ways others have forgotten. It means you still believe in magic, in meaning, in love that survives the worst of endings. It means your heart is still open, even if it needs a story to feel safe doing it. Just remember, the goal of fiction was never to replace life. It was to remind you what life could be. And maybe reality will never be perfect, but that doesn't mean it's empty. It just means you have to look a little closer to find the wonder that doesn't come with a soundtrack. Because maybe one day you'll realize the story you've been searching for was always the one you were living.